I watched my fiancé Chen Wei's face light up as my stepsister May walked into the restaurant, and I knew exactly what would happen next. In my past life, I'd sobbed when he broke our engagement for her. This time I smiled and said, "Choose her then. I won't stop you." His confident smirk faltered. "What?" "You heard me. If you want May, take her. I'm done." I stood, placing my engagement ring on the table between us. The 3-carat diamond caught the candlelight, throwing rainbow fractals across his stunned face. May's eyes widened. This wasn't how it went before. Last time, I'd begged. I'd cried. I'd made a scene that became family legend. Pathetic Lin Yue, so desperate she chased after a man who didn't want her. "Yue, wait!" Chen Wei reached for my hand, but I was already walking away. My stepmother's shrill voice stopped me at the door. "Lin Yue, you ungrateful girl! Do you know what you've just done? Chen Wei is from the Chen group. His family—" "Can have May," I finished coldly. "I'm sure she'll make him very happy. She certainly seemed eager enough showing up to our dinner in that dress." I looked at May standing there in the red silk dress I'd seen her wear in my previous life. The same dress she'd worn when she announced her engagement to Chen Wei at my grandmother's funeral. The same dress she'd worn when she revealed she was 3 months pregnant with his child. Not this time. I walked out of the restaurant into the Beijing night, breathing in the smog-thick air that somehow tasted like freedom. My phone buzzed, Chen Wei calling. I declined it. He called again, declined. After the 5th attempt, I blocked his number. The date was March 15th, 2019. I was 24 years old, and I was living this day for the second time. I died on December 3rd, 2024, at the age of 30. The first time I lived through these 5 years had been a slow march to destruction. After Chen Wei left me for May, I'd spiraled. My job performance suffered. My father, my real father, who died when I was 8, left me a trust fund that I couldn't access until I was 30, but my stepmother had convinced me to sign documents giving her temporary access when I was 25, claiming I needed her help managing it. By the time I realized she'd embezzled everything, it was too late. My inheritance, the apartment my father left me, even the small jewelry collection from my grandmother, all gone. May lived in my apartment with Chen Wei and their 2 children. My stepmother wore my grandmother's jade. I'd ended up working 3 jobs just to afford a studio apartment in a bad part of the city. No friends. They'd all taken May's side, believing her lies that I was jealous and unstable. No family. My stepbrother barely acknowledged my existence, too busy climbing the corporate ladder with Chen Wei's help. The final blow came when I developed cancer. Ovarian, stage 4. I'd ignored the symptoms for months because I couldn't afford to miss work, couldn't afford the hospital bills. By the time I collapsed at my second job, a late-night convenience store, it was too late. I spent my last months in a public hospital ward. Not one family member visited. Chen Wei and May sent a fruit basket with a card signed by someone's assistant. My stepmother texted once, "If you die, you die. Don't expect me to pay for a fancy funeral." I died alone on a Tuesday morning, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, wondering what I'd done to deserve such a life. Then I woke up. I woke up in my old bedroom, the master bedroom of my father's apartment, before my stepmother convinced me to let her redecorate and eventually take it for herself. The sheets were my favorite blue cotton ones, soft and smelling of the lavender detergent I used to buy before I couldn't afford it anymore. Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked the park, not the brick wall of the studio that would become my prison. My phone showed March 14th, 2019, the day before Chen Wei would break up with me. I'd lain there for an hour, tears streaming down my face, touching my body, healthy, young, pain-free. No tumor eating me from the inside. No exhaustion from working 70-hour weeks, no gray hairs, no permanent dark circles, no hands rough from industrial cleaning chemicals. Then I'd started planning. I knew exactly how the next 24 hours were supposed to unfold. Chen Wei would take me to dinner at the Golden Lotus, supposedly to celebrate our 6-month engagement anniversary. May would accidentally show up, having heard we'd be there from my stepmother. Chen Wei would see May in that red dress and suddenly remember they'd connected at a charity gala last month. He'd become distant, distracted. Then he'd suggest we take a break. In my first life, I'd cried and made a scene. He'd gotten angry, said I was too emotional and exhausting. The breakup became official. Within a week, he was dating May. Within a month, she was pregnant, or so she claimed. They married 3 months later, a lavish wedding paid for partially with my trust fund money that my stepmother had funneled to them as a gift. This time, I let it all play out exactly the same way, until the moment of the breakup. This time, I set him free, and judging by the 37 missed calls I had this morning, he was not handling it well. I dressed carefully for work, a tailored gray suit my first life self had bought on sale and wore maybe twice before she lost the confidence to dress well. I looked at myself in the mirror, 24 years old, clear skin, bright eyes, a figure not yet ravaged by stress and malnutrition. I looked like my father. I had his straight nose, his sharp jawline, his keen eyes. My father, Lin Jen, had been a brilliant businessman. He'd built his technology company from nothing, and by the time he died in a car accident when I was 8, he'd amassed a considerable fortune. He'd left everything to me in a trust to be managed by trustees until I turned 30, at which point I'd gain full control. But he'd also left a clause. If I wished, I could petition the trustees for early access at 25 if I could demonstrate financial responsibility and maturity. In my first life, my stepmother had manipulated me into signing documents that made her a co-trustee, and she'd systematically looted my inheritance with forged documents and my naive signatures. This time would be different. This time, I knew my stepmother Wang Mei's social security number, her bank accounts, her secret meetings with her lover. Yes, while she was lecturing me about family duty, she'd been having an affair with her Pilates instructor for 3 years. I knew which trustees she'd bribed, which documents she'd forged, which laws she'd broken. And I knew something else. My father had a younger brother. Lin Jian had been estranged from the family since before my father's death. Some argument about business, about money. I'd never known the details as a child, and in my first life, I'd never thought to ask. My stepmother certainly never mentioned him. But in my last months of life, delirious with pain medication, I'd done what every dying person does. I'd Googled my family name, searching for some connection, some meaning. That's when I found him. Lin Jian, billionaire real estate developer. His company, Lin Holdings, was one of the largest property development firms in Asia. He owned hotels, shopping centers, and luxury apartments across 15 countries. His estimated net worth was $8 billion, and he looked exactly like my father. In my first life, I'd been too weak, too poor, too close to death to do anything with this information. But I'd wondered, had he known about me? Had my father reached out before he died? Had Lin Jian ever tried to contact me? The answer I was determined to discover. My office at Mingzhu Marketing was a small cubicle on the 23rd floor. I was a junior account manager, a position I'd held for 2 years and would continue to hold for another 3 in my first timeline. Passed over for promotions repeatedly while less qualified candidates, friends of my stepmother, friends of Chen Wei's family, advanced around me. Not this time. Lin Yue, a word? My supervisor, Director Zhao, stood at my cubicle entrance. He was a soft-spoken man in his 50s who'd always been kind to me, one of the few people who'd treated me decently in my first life. Of course, Director Zhao. In his office, he closed the door and gestured for me to sit. I heard about last night. Word traveled fast. News spreads quickly. Your stepmother called my wife this morning. She's quite upset with you. Of course she was. She'd invested 2 years in cultivating a relationship between me and Chen Wei, seeing him as a golden goose she could pluck through me. Chen Wei's family wealth and connections were meant to be her ticket to higher social circles. My rebellion had derailed her plans. I'm sure she is, I said calmly. Director Zhao studied me. You seem different today, more composed. I had a moment of clarity, I said. I realized I was about to marry someone for all the wrong reasons. Better to end it now than divorce later. He nodded slowly. That's mature of you. Many young people lack such wisdom. He paused. I also wanted to speak with you about the Feng account. The Feng account. In my first life, I'd been assigned this account along with a senior manager named Lisa Zhang. Feng Industries was a mid-sized manufacturing company looking to rebrand. Lisa had stolen my entire marketing strategy. I'd stayed late for 2 weeks developing it and presented it as her own work. She'd gotten the promotion and the bonus. I'd gotten nothing. What about it? I asked carefully. I'm assigning it to you, solo. I blinked. Not with Lisa? Lisa is being transferred to the Shanghai office. It's sudden, but her husband got a job there, so the account is yours if you want it. Fair warning. Feng Industries is demanding. If you succeed, it's a significant promotion opportunity. If you fail, he spread his hands. In my first life, Lisa's plagiarism had been so smooth, I'd never even realized what happened until years later when I ran into an old colleague who'd mentioned how impressed everyone had been with Lisa's innovative approach to the Feng rebrand, the exact approach I'd developed. But Lisa wasn't transferring in my first timeline. This was different. Something had changed. Or perhaps, I thought, her transfer had been planned all along and I'd simply never known, because I'd been too busy crying over Chen Wei to pay attention to office politics. I'll take it, I said firmly. Director Zhao smiled. Good. The client meeting is next Thursday. Prepare a full marketing proposal. This is your chance, Yue. Don't waste it. I spent the next week in focused obsession. During the day, I worked on the Feng Industries proposal. At night, I researched Lin Jian. My uncle, I still felt strange thinking of him that way, lived in a penthouse in Shanghai. He was unmarried, no children. He rarely gave interviews, but when he did, he spoke about his older brother with deep affection and barely concealed grief. Lin Jian was the better man, he'd said in a Forbes Asia interview from 2017. His death was the greatest tragedy of my life. We'd argued before he died over something stupid. I never got to apologize. There were photos of him at charity events, always alone or with business associates, never with family. In one photo from a children's hospital fundraiser, he was holding a young girl's hand, and the caption mentioned his generous donation to pediatric cancer research. I studied his face in that photo for a long time. He looked sad. On Wednesday evening, I drafted an email. Dear Mr. Lin Jian, you don't know me, but my name is Lin, Yue. I am the daughter of Lin Zhen, who I believe was your brother. I apologize for contacting you out of the blue, but I've recently learned of your existence, and I wondered if you might be willing to meet with me. I understand if you prefer not to. I only ask that you consider it. I have questions about my father that only you might be able to answer. Respectfully, Lin Yu. I attached a photo of myself at age 7 with my father, one of the few photos I still had, kept in a lockbox my stepmother never found. In it, my father held me on his shoulders, both of us laughing at something off camera. The resemblance between us was unmistakable. I hovered over the send button for 10 minutes before finally clicking it. Then I returned to work on the Feng proposal. The Feng Industries meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Thursday. I arrived at 1:30 p.m. with printed copies of my proposal, a tablet with digital mock-ups, and a confidence I'd never possessed in my first life. Mr. Feng was a gruff man in his 60s who'd built his manufacturing company from a single factory floor. His daughter, Feng Xiaojing, sat beside him. She'd be taking over the company in the next few years, and she was the real decision-maker, though her father didn't quite realize it yet. I pitched them my vision, a complete rebrand that honored their legacy while positioning them for modern markets. Their current image was dated, stuck in the 1990s. I proposed a sleek, minimalist design that emphasized quality and sustainability, concepts that would become increasingly important in the 2020s, though they weren't yet mainstream in 2019. You're asking us to change everything, Mr. Feng grumbled. I'm asking you to evolve, I corrected gently. Your core values remain the same, but the market is changing. Younger consumers, the ones who'll be your customers for the next 30 years, they care about different things than their parents did. They want companies with values, with environmental consciousness, with authenticity. Feng Xiaojing leaned forward. The sustainability angle is interesting. Tell me more about the supply chain transparency component. I did. For the next hour, we discussed strategy, implementation, costs, and timelines. I answered every question with confidence because I'd lived through the market shifts of the next 5 years. I knew what worked because I'd seen it work. We'll think about it, Mr. Feng said finally, but his daughter was already nodding. 2 days later, I got the call. Feng Industries had accepted my proposal. The contract was worth 2 million yuan over 2 years, and I'd been assigned as the lead account manager with a team under me. Director Zhao called me into his office with a rare smile. Congratulations, Manager Lin. You've earned your promotion. Manager Lin. I'd been senior manager in title only once in my first life, and that was at my third job, a failing startup that paid in promises and wilted vegetables from the owner's garden. I called my stepmother that evening to share the news. A promotion? Her voice dripped with false sweetness. How wonderful, Yue. You must celebrate. Why don't you come for dinner on Sunday? Mei and Chenwei will be there. Of course they would. I'll be there, I said. Sunday dinner at my stepmother's house, the house my father had bought that should have been mine, was exactly as awkward as I'd anticipated. Chen Wei couldn't stop staring at me. He looked terrible. Dark circles, wrinkled shirt, a nervous energy that manifested in constantly checking his phone. Mei sat beside him, touching his arm possessively, wearing a dress that was slightly too tight. Showing off her figure or perhaps hiding something? In my first life, she'd announced her pregnancy at this dinner. I'd been devastated, having still hoped Chen Wei might come back to me. This time, I watched her with clinical interest, noting the way she avoided wine, the way her hand occasionally drifted to her still flat stomach. Yes, she was pregnant. Right on schedule. So, Yue, my stepmother began, passing a dish of braised pork. We heard about your little promotion. How nice. Thank you. Though I do worry it might go to your head. You're still very young, inexperienced. These corporate positions can be quite demanding. I'm sure I'll manage. With no husband to support you, though. Chen Wei, didn't you always say Yue would need someone to help guide her career decisions? Chen Wei flinched. That's not exactly. It must be lonely, Mei interrupted, her voice sugary. Working so hard with no one to come home to? I'm so grateful for Chen Wei. He's been so supportive of my yoga studio plans. Yoga studio, right. The one she'd fund with my trust money that would fail within a year, losing hundreds of thousands of yuan. Then she'd move on to a boutique, then a catering business. Each venture would fail, each funded with money stolen from me. I'm sure you'll be very successful, I said blandly. My stepbrother Wang Chen finally looked up from his phone. Actually, I've been meaning to ask, Yue. Your father's trust fund, you turn 25 in a few months. Have you thought about what you'll do with it? There it was, the real reason for this dinner. I've thought about it, I said carefully. Your stepmother and I have been discussing it, he continued, with the presumptuous tone of someone who believed they had authority over my life. We think it would be wise to invest it in Chen Wei's family business. The Chen Group is expanding into Southeast Asia, and they're looking for investors. It would secure your future, tie you to a reputable family. Even though I ended my engagement to Chen Wei? I asked sweetly. Awkward silence. That was a misunderstanding, my stepmother said quickly. Young people have arguments. It doesn't mean anything. I'm sure Chen Wei would be willing to overlook your emotional outburst if you were more reasonable about reconciling. I looked at Chen Wei. He was staring at his plate, jaw tight. Is that what you want, Chen Wei? I asked. For me to be reasonable? He looked up. Yue, I made a mistake. I was confused. Mei and I... He glanced at her. It's not what I thought it was. I want you back. Mei's face went white, then red. What? I'm sorry, Mei. You're wonderful, but Yue and I have history. We were planning a future together. His eyes pleaded with me. Weren't we, Yue? This was different. In my first life, Chen Wei had never wavered. He'd chosen Mei and never looked back. But now, with my sudden confidence, my promotion, my apparent indifference, I'd become desirable again. Or rather, my trust fund had. How tedious. No, I said simply. I said no, Chen Wei. I don't want you back. I don't want to reconcile. And I certainly don't want to invest my father's money in your family's business. I stood, placing my napkin beside my untouched plate. Thank you for dinner, but I should go. Sit down. My stepmother's voice was sharp. We're not finished discussing this. I am. You ungrateful girl, after everything I've done for you, raising you, caring for you after your father died by raising me? I turned to face her fully. You mean moving into my father's apartment, spending my child support, and treating me like a servant while you spoiled your own children? That kind of raising? Her face flushed. How dare you? I dare because I'm done being silent. I looked around the table. I'm done pretending this is a family. You're not my family. You've never been my family. You've been parasites, waiting for me to turn 25 so you could drain my inheritance like you've drained everything else my father left me. That's not true, May cried. Mom loves you. Your mother loves my father's money. There's a difference. I grabbed my purse. Don't contact me again unless it's for legal matters. I'll be changing my emergency contacts and medical proxy this week. I walked out to shocked silence. My phone rang before I even reached my car. Not my stepmother. No, she'd be too proud to call immediately. It was Chen Wei. Yue, please, let's talk. Just the two of us. I can explain. You're going to be a father, I said. May's pregnant. About 6 weeks along, I'd estimate. Congratulations. What? She's not. She never said. She'll tell you soon. Probably next week once she's sure you can't come back to me. And you'll marry her because that's what your parents will expect. Your mother won't tolerate a bastard grandchild. I unlocked my car. Goodbye, Chen Wei. Yue, wait. How do you even... I hung up. As I drove away, I checked my email on my phone at a red light. One new message received 3 hours ago while I'd been at dinner. The sender, Lin Jian. My hands shook as I pulled into a parking lot to read it properly. Dear Lin Yue, I cannot express how shocked I was to receive your email. I have thought of you often over the years and wondered if you knew I existed. Your father and I quarreled over something meaningless shortly before his death, and I have regretted it every day since. I never reached out because your stepmother made it clear I was not welcome in your life, and I foolishly respected those wishes. I would very much like to meet you. I am in Beijing this week for business. Would you be free for lunch tomorrow? I can send a car for you. Your uncle Lin Jian. I read it 3 times, tears blurring my vision. Someone wanted to know me. Someone who remembered my father, who carried his same blood, who had mourned him for 20 years. I typed back a single word, yes. Lin Jian sent a Mercedes to pick me up at noon. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, said very little during the drive to the Four Seasons Hotel, but he did mention that Mr. Lin is very nervous about meeting you. The restaurant was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A hostess led me to a private dining room where a man stood looking out at the skyline. He turned when I entered, and I gasped. It was like seeing a ghost. He had my father's face, older, more lined, gray at the temples, but unmistakably my father's face. And when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Lin Yu, he whispered. You look just like him, just like Jen. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at this man who was a stranger and yet family who carried my father's face forward into a future my father never got to see. He crossed the room and hesitantly held out his hand. I took it, and then, impulsively, I hugged him. He went rigid for a moment, then his arms came around me, and he held me like I was precious, like I was fragile, like I was family. I'm sorry, he said, his voice rough. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I should have fought for you. I should have... It's okay, I said. Though it wasn't. Though years of loneliness and abuse could never be erased by one apology. But it was a start. You're here now. We sat down, and over the next 3 hours, over a lunch neither of us really ate, he told me about my father. Jen was brilliant, Lin Jian said. But he was also kind. Too kind, perhaps. When he met Wang Mei, your stepmother, I warned him. She was clearly after his money. But he was lonely after your mother died, and you were so young, and he thought you needed a mother figure. His jaw tightened. I was harsh about it. We fought. I said terrible things. And then he died, and I never got to take them back. What did you say? That he was a fool, that he was dishonoring your mother's memory, that Wang Mei would destroy everything he'd built. He looked at me. I was right about her character, but wrong in how I expressed it, and my pride kept me away. Wang Mei told me after the funeral that you didn't want to see me, that I'd upset you with my cruel words about your new mother. I believed her. I shouldn't have. I never knew you existed until a few weeks ago, I said. She never mentioned you, not once. His hands clenched on the table. I should have verified. Should have tried harder. I was angry and grieving, and I let that woman keep me from my only niece. He looked at me intently. Tell me about your life, Yue. Are you happy? Are you safe? And I told him, not everything, not the rebirth, not the knowledge of the future, but enough. The years of emotional abuse, the favoritism toward May, the financial manipulation, the isolation. The trust fund I couldn't access until I turned 25, the advisors my stepmother had positioned to help her steal it. His face grew darker with each revelation. By the end, his voice was steel. This ends now. I'm a trustee of your father's estate. Did you know that? I blinked. What? Your father named me in the original trust documents. But after his death, Wang Mei had lawyers petition to have me removed, claiming I was unstable and unsuitable. The court agreed based on her testimony. But if you, as the beneficiary, petition to have me reinstated, especially now that you're an adult, he smiled grimly. I can audit everything. Every transaction, every signature, every document. And if there's fraud, and from what you've told me, there's definitely fraud, I can have her arrested. Really? Really. And more than that, he pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. I want you in my life, Yue. I don't know if I can ever make up for the years I wasn't there, but I'd like to try. My company is expanding into tech infrastructure. Your father was a tech genius, and I suspect you inherited his talents. Have you ever considered a career change? I stared at the card. Lin Holdings, Executive Vice President of Strategic Development. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a future. A real one. With family who values you. But only if you want it. I won't pressure you. I've failed you enough already. I thought about Mingzhu marketing, about the promotion I'd just earned. It was a good job, a stepping stone. But Lin Holdings? That was a leap into a different stratosphere. And more than that, it was family. Real family. I want it, I said as science. I want all of it, the job, the audit, the relationship. I want to know my father through you. I want to build something that would make him proud. Lin Jian's eyes glistened. He would be so proud of you already, Yue. So proud. The next 2 months were a whirlwind. First, I hired lawyers, not local ones, but a prestigious Shanghai firm that Lin Jian recommended. They filed a petition to reinstate Lin Jian as a trustee of my father's estate and to audit all transactions since his death. My stepmother fought it, of course, but her lawyers were no match for a firm that represented billionaires. The audit uncovered everything: forged signatures, embezzled funds, fake loans to herself and her children. She'd stolen over 8 million yuan from my trust, roughly 1.2 million US dollars. The investigators also found the bribed trustees who turned on my stepmother immediately to save themselves. Wang Mei was arrested on 18 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. The trial was set for January 2020. Simultaneously, I gave my notice at Mingzhu Marketing. Director Zhao was sad to see me go, but understood. Your uncle is a legend in the industry, he said. This is an incredible opportunity. Don't waste it. I wrapped up the Feng Industries account, training my replacement, making sure my team was positioned for success. Feng Xiaojing took me to lunch on my last day. You know, she said, you could have stayed. Used our account as leverage for a better position. I know, but I'm ready for something bigger. She smiled. Good. Too many talented women settle. Don't be one of them. Starting at Lynn Holdings in December 2019 was like stepping into a different world. The Shanghai headquarters was a gleaming tower in Pudong, all glass and steel and cutting-edge design. My office was on the 48th floor with a view of the river. My title was Director of Strategic Technology Development, and my job was to identify promising tech startups for acquisition or investment. In other words, my job was to use my knowledge of the next 5 years to make Lynn Holdings even wealthier. I started slowly, carefully. I recommended investing in a small medical supply company that I knew would boom during the pandemic. I suggested buying a stake in a remote work software company that would become essential in 2020. I identified 3 biotech startups working on mRNA technology. Lin Jian watched me carefully at first, perhaps wondering if nepotism had clouded his judgment. But after my first 3 recommendations all showed immediate growth, he started listening more closely. How do you know? He asked one day as we reviewed a proposal. You're 24. Some of these sectors, you speak about them with the certainty of someone who's been in the industry for decades. I read a lot, I said, which was true but insufficient. And I'm good at seeing patterns. He studied me for a long moment. You're like your father. He could see around corners too. It's a gift. A gift? Sure, we'd call it that. By the end of December, my investment recommendations had made Lynn Holdings 70 million yuan in paper gains. By March 2020, as the pandemic started, those gains would triple. But all of this, the job, the success, the money, was just set up. The real revenge was yet to come. Chen Wei married Mei in a small ceremony in November 2019. No lavish wedding this time. His parents were furious about the rushed timeline, about the obvious pregnancy, about the broken engagement with me. They'd liked me, or at least liked my docile nature. Mei was beautiful but high maintenance, and they could see it. I sent a congratulations card with a generous gift card. Kill them with kindness, as they say. The baby arrived in May 2020, a boy they named Chen Haoran. I sent another gift, expensive baby clothes and a savings bond. Mei posted photos on social media, her life seemingly perfect. Handsome husband, beautiful baby, comfortable apartment. That apartment was mine. In my first life, my stepmother had manipulated me into signing it over to her when I was 25, desperate for her approval. She'd immediately given it to Mei and Chen Wei as a wedding gift. This time, when I turned 25 in July 2020, I had full control of my trust. And one of my first acts was to reclaim legal ownership of the apartment my father had left me, the one currently occupied by my stepsister and her new family. The eviction notice was hand-delivered by my lawyers in August 2020. Mei called me screaming, "You can't do this! We have a baby! Where will we go?" "That's not my concern," I said calmly. "The apartment is mine. It was always mine. You've been living there illegally for 9 months. I'm giving you 30 days to vacate." "You vindictive bitch. After everything my mother did for you, your mother is in prison, Mei, and she'll be there for the next 6 years. Maybe during that time you can reflect on the consequences of stealing." She hung up on me. Chen Wei called next, his voice pleading. "Yue, please, be reasonable. We can pay you rent." "I don't want your rent. I want my property back." "We have a baby. Have some compassion." I had a dead father and a family that tortured me for 16 years. "Where was your compassion then?" Silence. 30 days, Chen Wei. After that, the police will remove you." They moved out in 28 days. I had the apartment completely renovated, tearing out every trace of their occupancy, and then I didn't move in. I kept my Shanghai apartment near Lin Holdings headquarters. The Beijing apartment, my father's apartment, I kept as a shrine of sorts. Exactly as my father had decorated it, restored from photos I found in his old office. Sometimes I stayed there when I was in Beijing for business, walking through rooms that echoed with memories of a childhood that ended too soon. My stepmother's trial concluded in February 2021. She was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in prison, plus restitution of all stolen funds with interest. She'd have to pay back nearly 12 million yuan, money she didn't have as she'd spent most of it on her lifestyle and her children's failed ventures. Wang Chen, my stepbrother, lost his job when his connection to the fraud became public. No criminal charges. He'd been peripherally involved at most, but his reputation was destroyed. Last I heard, he was working at a car dealership in a third-tier city. Mei and Chen Wei's marriage crumbled under financial pressure. Chen Wei's parents had cut them off, disappointed in their son's choices. Without family money, without my Mai. Stolen inheritance to prop them up, they struggled. Mei's yoga studio never materialized. Chen Wei's career stagnated. They fought constantly. They divorced in June 2021. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances. I'd reconnected with some old friends after my stepmother was imprisoned, and the truth about my family situation came out. People apologized for believing Mei's lies, for abandoning me when I'd needed them. Some I forgave. Some I didn't. Chen Wei tried to contact me several times after his divorce. Long emails about regret, about how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, about how he'd never stopped loving me. I never responded. By 2022, Lin Holdings had become a major player in tech infrastructure, thanks largely to my investments. The pandemic had accelerated digital transformation exactly as I'd known it would, and every sector we'd invested in boomed. The company's value tripled. Lin Jian promoted me to senior vice president and made me his official heir. "You have a gift," he told me. "Not just for business, but for understanding people, for seeing what others miss. Your father had it too. I want you to take over the company when I retire." "That's years away," I protested. "Perhaps, but I'm 63, Yue. I don't have children. You're my only family, and you've earned this 100 times over. The board agrees." The board? I'd met them all now. Hard-eyed business people who respected only results. And I'd delivered results beyond their wildest projections. I was 27 years old and the heir to a multi-billion-dollar empire. But I still wasn't done. In August 2022, Lin Holdings announced a major acquisition, Chen Group's Southeast Asian operations. The Chen Group had overextended themselves in their expansion, making risky investments right before the pandemic. When travel shut down and supply chains collapsed, they'd hemorrhaged money. By 2022, they were desperate. They needed a buyer for their international operations or face bankruptcy. Lin Holdings offered them a lifeline at a steep discount. We acquired their entire Southeast Asian portfolio for 40% of its pre-pandemic value. I led the negotiations personally. Chen Wei's father sat across from me in the conference room, his face gray. "You've grown cold, Lin Yue." "I've grown up," I corrected. "Your son taught me that lesson." "This is revenge. This is business. You have an asset. We want it. You need money. We have it. If you don't want our offer, take it to another buyer." I slid the contract across the table. "But we both know there isn't another buyer, not at any price." He signed. As part of the acquisition, Chen Wei was transferred to our Jakarta office as a regional manager, a demotion from his previous position, but at least he still had a job. I could have fired him entirely, but that felt too merciful, too quick. Better to let him work under my company, following my directives, seeing my name on every memo, and policy change. Better to let him live with his choices every single day. I met someone in the fall of 2022. His name was David Zhang, a venture capitalist from California who'd moved to Shanghai to be closer to the Asian tech scene. We met at a conference where I was giving a keynote speech on post-pandemic investment strategies. He approached me afterward, charming and intelligent, and asked me to dinner. I said yes. David was everything Chen Wei wasn't. Confident without being arrogant, ambitious without being ruthless, kind without being weak. He was handsome in an understated way, black-rimmed glasses, slightly messy hair, a smile that reached his eyes. He didn't know about my past, not at first, just that I was a successful executive. And he liked me for who I was in the present, not for what he could gain from me. We dated for 6 months before I told him everything, well, almost everything. The abuse, the betrayal, the long climb back. Not the rebirth. That secret I kept to myself, a strange gift I still didn't fully understand. "You're extraordinary," he said when I finished. "To survive all that and not just survive, but thrive. That's incredible strength. Or stubbornness, I said. He kissed me. I'll take stubborn. Stubborn means you won't give up easily, even on difficult relationships with workaholics who travel too much. I laughed. Are you calling yourself difficult? I'm calling us both difficult, but maybe that's what makes it work. He proposed in March 2023, on the anniversary of the day we met. A simple ring, nothing ostentatious. He knew I hated flashiness. Just a single diamond on a platinum band, elegant and timeless. I said yes. We planned the wedding for December 2023, 4 years after I'd started at Lin Holdings, 8 years after I'd broken off my engagement with Chen Wei. It was everything my first wedding was supposed to be. A beautiful ceremony at a historic hotel in Shanghai, attended by friends and colleagues who genuinely cared about me. Lin Jian walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. David's family flew in from California, warm, loving people who welcomed me immediately. May sent a card. Just a card, no gift, no explanation. Inside, she'd written, "Congratulations, you won." I threw it away without responding. Because she was wrong. This wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming a life that had been stolen from me. About building something real from the ashes of trauma and betrayal. The wedding reception was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. As David and I shared our first dance, I looked around at all the people who'd helped me get here. Lin Jian, beaming with pride, Director Zhao, who'd given me my first real chance, Feng Xiaojing, who'd taught me not to settle, and David's family, who'd accepted me without hesitation. This was my family now. This was my life. In early 2004, I received an unusual phone call. "Ms. Lin, this is Wei Min from Shanghai Women's Prison. I'm calling regarding Wang Mei, inmate number—" "I know who she is," I said. "What does she want?" "She's requested to speak with you. She says it's urgent." I almost refused, but curiosity got the better of me. "When?" "This Saturday at 2 p.m. if you're available." I was. The visiting room was exactly as depressing as I'd imagined. Gray walls, metal tables, the smell of industrial cleaner and despair. Wang Mei was let in by a guard, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged decades in 3 years. Her hair was completely gray, pulled back in a severe bun. She was thin, gaunt, with deep lines around her mouth and eyes. She wore the standard prison uniform, shapeless and drab. She sat down across from me, and for a long moment we just stared at each other. "You look well," she said finally, her voice raspy. "Thank you. I heard you got married to some American businessman." "He's Chinese-American. His family immigrated when he was a child." "And you're running Lin Holdings now. Your uncle is retiring." "In 6 months, yes." She nodded slowly. "You got everything. Everything I tried to take from you, everything I thought May deserved. You have it all." "Did you call me here to list my accomplishments?" I asked. "Because I have a busy schedule." "I called you here to apologize." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Apologize? Now, after everything? "I know it's too late. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need to say it anyway." She looked down at her hands, worn and scarred from prison labor. "I was jealous of you. From the moment I married your father, I was jealous. You had his love unconditionally. I had to work for every scrap of affection. And when he died, I thought, finally, everything would be mine. The money, the apartment, the life he'd built, but it wasn't. It was all held in trust for you, and I hated you for it. So you tortured me for 16 years. "Yes." She met my eyes. "I tortured you. I favored May. I isolated you. I tried to destroy your confidence so you'd be easier to control, easier to manipulate. And when that wasn't enough, I stole from you. And I convinced myself you deserved it, that you were ungrateful, that you owed me for raising you." "You didn't raise me," I said coldly. You housed me. You fed me. You did the bare minimum required by law. That's not motherhood. I know. Tears ran down her face. I know that now. Prison gives you a lot of time to think, to see your life clearly. And I see now that I destroyed my own children trying to destroy you. May is miserable. Her marriage failed. Her life is nothing like what she dreamed. Chen barely speaks to me. All because I taught them that cruelty and greed were acceptable. All because I couldn't let go of jealousy. Is this supposed to make me feel sorry for you? No, I'm not asking for pity. She wiped her eyes. I'm just trying to take responsibility, to say that I was wrong and you didn't deserve any of it. You were a child, an orphan, and I should have loved you. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no forgiveness. Just a vast emptiness where my feelings about this woman used to be. Okay, I said. Okay. You've apologized. I heard you. I acknowledge that you now understand what you did wrong, but I don't forgive you. I'll never forgive you. What you did to me shaped who I became, and I'm proud of who I am now, but that doesn't mean the journey wasn't torture. You stole my childhood, my innocence, my ability to trust. You can't give those back with an apology. She nodded, more tears falling. I understand. Good. I stood. I won't be visiting again. Live with your regrets. That's your punishment. I walked out without looking back. Lin Jian officially retired in June 2024, and I became CEO of Lin Holdings at the age of 29. The youngest CEO in the company's history and one of the youngest female CEOs of a major corporation in Asia. The press covered it extensively. Forbes Asia put me on their cover, Lin Yue, the prodigy who rebuilt her father's legacy. The article detailed my rise, my innovations, my vision for the company. It mentioned my uncle and my father, the tragic death that had orphaned me, but only in passing. I didn't tell them about my stepmother, about the abuse. That was my story, and I chose not to share it publicly. It would only generate pity, and I didn't want pity. I wanted respect, and I earned it. On December 3rd, 2024, I woke up in my Shanghai apartment in bed beside my husband and realized this was the day I died in my first life. I lay there for a long time listening to David breathe beside me, watching dawn light creep across the ceiling. In another timeline, I died today, alone, sick, abandoned. In this timeline, I was alive, healthy, loved, successful beyond my wildest dreams. I'd been given an impossible gift, a second chance, and I'd used it to build not just a better life, but the best life. David stirred. You're awake early. Just thinking. About what? About how grateful I am. He pulled me close. For what? For everything. For you. For second chances. For the choices we make and the lives we build. I kissed him. For surviving. Always so philosophical in the morning, he teased, but his arms tightened around me. I love you, Yue. I love you too. In March 2025, I received an email with no subject line. The sender was Chen Wei. Yue, I saw your Forbes cover. You look happy. I'm glad. I know you'll never read this, let alone respond. But I needed to say it anyway. You were right. About everything, I chose poorly. I chased the wrong things, trusted the wrong people, and I've paid for it every day since. May and I barely speak. Our son asks about you sometimes. He heard the stories from his grandmother. I don't know what to tell him about the woman who should have been his mother. I work for your company now. Did you know that? I'm a regional manager in Jakarta. Every policy, every directive, every decision that comes down from Shanghai headquarters, your name is on it. You're my boss. The woman I was too stupid to choose is now the person who controls my career, my future. It's the most exquisite torture I can imagine. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I lost. I see what you became despite everyone trying to break you. I see your strength, your intelligence, your grace. I see the woman I was too blind to appreciate. Be happy, Yue. You've earned it. Chen Wei. I read it once, then forwarded it to my trash folder. David found me at my desk a few minutes later. Everything okay? Perfect, I said and meant it. In August 2005, 25, Lin Holdings announced a major charitable initiative, the Lin Zhen Memorial Foundation, dedicated to supporting orphaned children in China. We pledged 500 million yuan over 10 years to fund education, housing, and counseling services. I personally oversaw the foundation's creation, choosing board members, developing programs, setting up scholarships. It was the most important project of my career, not because it made money, but because it honored my father and helped children like I'd been. Children who'd lost parents, children who were vulnerable to exploitation and abuse, children who needed protection and love and someone to believe in them. At the foundation's launch event, I gave a speech. I talked about my father, about his kindness and brilliance. I talked about loss and resilience. And I talked about second chances, how life sometimes gives us opportunities to rewrite our stories and how important it is to use those chances wisely. My father's left me a financial inheritance, I said. But more importantly, he left me a legacy of compassion, of believing in people's potential, of building things that matter. This foundation is my way of continuing that legacy, of ensuring that no child faces their grief alone. The audience applauded. Lin Jian in the front row wiped tears from his eyes. After the event, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 21, shy, holding a folder of papers. Ms. Lin, I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you. I heard about your foundation, and it reminded me you changed my life 4 years ago. I did? I was an intern at Mingzhu Marketing. You probably don't remember me, but you were kind to me when everyone else treated me like I was invisible. You asked about my studies, gave me advice on my career. Small things, but they mattered. I did remember her, vaguely. A quiet girl who brought me coffee once when I was working late on the Feng proposal. You told me something, she continued. You said, don't let anyone make you feel small. You're capable of extraordinary things. I've thought about that almost every day since. I'm glad it helped, I said, touched. It did. I graduated top of my class. I got into Harvard Business School on a full scholarship. I start next month. She held out the folder. I wanted to show you, to say thank you. I took the folder, opened it. Her acceptance letter, her scholarship award, her transcripts, all outstanding. This is wonderful, I said. You should be very proud. I am, but I wanted you to know that you made a difference, that your kindness mattered. She left, and I stood there holding her folder, thinking about small moments and their ripple effects. In my first life, I'd been so beaten down I could barely manage to be kind to myself, let alone to others. But in this life, I'd had the strength to be generous, and that generosity had mattered to someone. It was a reminder that revenge, satisfying as it was, wasn't the point. The point was building a life worth living. The point was being the person my father raised me to be. By October 2025, 5 years after my rebirth, Lin Holdings had become the third largest tech infrastructure company in Asia. Our market cap was $78 billion. We employed over 50,000 people across 12 countries. We'd invested in breakthrough technologies, quantum computing, green energy, advanced medical devices. I was 30 years old, happily married, professionally fulfilled, and financially secure beyond measure. I'd also been reborn for exactly as long as I'd lived the first time. 5 years, from March 2019 to my death in December 2024, and 5 years from March 2019 to October 2025. Sometimes I wondered if the rebirth would end. If one day I'd wake up and the knowledge would be gone, and I'd just be a woman who'd gotten lucky. But the memories never faded. I still remembered dying, still remembered the ceiling tiles, the pain, the loneliness. I never wanted to forget. Those memories were my armor, my motivation, my reminder of what I'd overcome. On a cold November evening, David and I hosted a dinner party at our Shanghai apartment. Lin Jian was there, along with several close friends and colleagues. We talked about business and politics and the art we'd just bought for the living room. At one point, someone asked me the secret to my success. Luck, I said immediately, and everyone laughed. No, really, the person pressed. You've made incredibly smart decisions. The pandemic investments, the tech acquisitions. It's like you can see the future. I glanced at David, who was watching me with a slight smile. He knew something about my past, but not everything. Some secrets you keep even from the people you love most. I've had good mentors, I said, and I learned from my mistakes, but honestly, I think the real secret is that I stopped letting fear make my decisions. I stopped worrying about what other people thought I deserved. I started believing I was worth investing in. My ideas, my instincts, myself. That's beautiful, someone said. It's also practical, I added. Confidence is a competitive advantage, especially for women in business. We're taught to be humble, to downplay our abilities, but humility doesn't close deals or build empires. Confidence does. Lin Jian raised his glass. To confidence, then, and to the brilliant woman who embodies it. Everyone drank. The conversation moved on. But I thought about my words, about the journey from the broken girl crying over Chen Wei to the woman I'd become. I'd done this. Me. Yes, I'd had the advantage of foreknowledge, of a second chance. But I'd still had to be brave. I'd still had to work. I'd still had to believe in myself when everyone else saw me as worthless. The rebirth gave me a weapon, but I'd wielded it. December 2025. 6 years after my rebirth, 1 year after I should have died. I sat in my office on the 63rd floor of Lin Holdings Tower, the new headquarters we'd built in Shanghai's financial district, and looked out at the city sprawling below. It was late evening, the skyline glittering with lights, the river reflecting them like a mirror. My phone buzzed. A news alert: Chen Group had filed for bankruptcy protection. The company that had once been a titan of industry, that had rejected me as not good enough for their precious son, was collapsing under debt and mismanagement. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just the mild interest you might feel reading about a stranger's misfortune. They weren't my enemies anymore. They were just people who'd made poor choices and were living with the consequences. My real victory wasn't their destruction. It was my creation, the life I'd built, the company I led, the family I'd found, the love I'd earned. On my desk sat a framed photo. My father and me at age 7, the same photo I'd sent to Lin Jian all those years ago. Next to it was my wedding photo with David, and next to that was a picture from the foundation launch event, me cutting a ribbon alongside a group of children we'd helped, their faces bright with hope. This was my revenge. Living well. Living freely. Living without the weight of other people's cruelty defining my worth. I thought about my first life, about the woman who died alone and afraid. I thought about what I'd say to her if I could, what wisdom I'd offer. You're stronger than you know. The people who hurt you will fade to insignificance. You will survive. You will thrive. You will become extraordinary, and you will do it not because of them, but despite them. That's the greatest revenge of all. My phone rang. David, calling from California, where he was visiting his family for the holidays. Hey, he said. Just wanted to hear your voice before bed. I miss you. I miss you too. How's everyone? Good. They all send their love. My mom is making you that soup you like for when you arrive next week. Tell her I'm grateful. I will. He paused. You sound happy. I am happy. Good. You deserve it. You? All of it. So do you. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing and everything. The comfortable conversation of two people who know each other deeply. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office feeling profoundly at peace. I'd been reborn not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, completely. I'd shed the skin of the victim and become the architect of my own destiny. And if I'd learned anything from my impossible second chance, it was this. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's transcendence. It's becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so genuinely happy that your former tormentors become irrelevant. They'd tried to break me. Instead, they'd forged me into steel. I turned off my computer, gathered my things, and left the office. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to prove my worth. But tonight, I was simply grateful. Grateful for second chances, grateful for the family I'd found and the love I'd earned, grateful for every scar that reminded me of how far I'd come. I'd been reborn into a nightmare, but I'd transformed it into a dream. And that, I thought as I stepped into the elevator that would carry me down to the city below, to the life I'd built, to the future I'd claimed, that was a story worth living.